In one of my previous videos entitled How I Doubled My Salary in 3 Years as an Angular Developer, I outlined the actions that I took to progressively increase my salary over the years. And one of the actions that I held firm to was to self-promote. And by self-promote, I mean creating the tools to help me showcase my skills and talent. One of the tools that I created very recently is an online portfolio. In this video, I want to give you an idea of a personal portfolio that you can customize and make your own. I created this portfolio website such that it looks really good, but it doesn't have a lot of code. Starting at the top of the portfolio, we have a navigation bar, and the navigation bar is fixed in position. To the very left of the navigation bar, we have the brand, which is the developer's name. To the right of the brand, we have a toggle button, and I'll show you what that toggle button does in a moment. And aligned along the right, we have these navigation links, each of which takes us to a different area in the portfolio. This first area of the portfolio that we're looking at is the profile section, which contains the developer's picture as well as the developer's name. And notice there is a horizontal bar under the name, and this is replicated throughout the entire website, where each area contains a bar under its name. Under the developer's name, we have the developer's title, as well as a blurb. Right now, it's just some temporary lorem text, but this is where you can put a paragraph or two that tells the viewer a little bit about yourself. And below that, we have a download resume button. You can choose to either have your resume be downloadable via this button, or we also have a resume area. So you can choose to implement either of those methods for including your resume in the portfolio. Below the profile section, we have the skills section, and this is where you can list all of your technical skills. Below the skills section, we have the resume section. And again, this can be included instead of using the download button. But notice the resume is set up in a timeline fashion where each job is displayed along the timeline, with the top being the most recent. And notice how the job title and tenure and company alternates being on the left or right side of the timeline, as does the job description. Below the resume section, we have the projects section. And this is where you can include thumbnails and descriptions of any online projects that you have hosted. And again, like the resume section, each of the projects is sort of staggering, with the thumbnail being on the left and the description and link being on the right. And there's also some animation in each of the thumbnails for each project. Below the projects area, we have finally a contact section in which you can put your email, phone number, and social media icons. So those are all the sections of the profile. And while I kept this to a minimum as to what I'm showing, such as skills, resume, and projects, feel free to add other sections of things that you'd like to include in your portfolio. Now, for the toggle button, what this allows us to do is to change from a light theme to a dark theme. Currently, this is the light theme, and notice there's a gray background as well as a white background for each of the alternating sections. And this is the light theme. And if we click the toggle button, we go into a dark theme. And now we have black and a very dark gray for each of the alternating sections. And the contact area is always in a black background. So that's our portfolio. And again, you can customize it according to what you want to include in your portfolio. And you can either use the download resume button or the resume section to include your resume in the portfolio. Just as important as the content of the portfolio is the responsiveness of the portfolio. And that's because you're touting your skills as a front-end developer. And those skills and your skills should include your ability to make a website look good on a variety of devices. So I'm going to turn on the responsive mode in my browser. And currently we're seeing the portfolio in a very wide setting, 1860 by 863 pixels. And this is analogous to what we saw in the walkthrough. So notice that the nav bar is showing all of the links. And if I scroll down, we're seeing the skills set in columns of 3. The resume is showing information on both sides of the timeline. The projects are alternating the thumbnail and descriptions, and the contact information is showing the developer name, email, and phone number on the left, with the social media icons on the right and a pipe between both of those. So this is what the website looks like in the wider devices. So now I'm going to decrease the width of the device, and notice what occurs as I decrease the width. First, take a look at the developer name. One of the first things that we see is that at this breakpoint, the area or the container width has decreased. And we see in this first breakpoint, the skills have decreased from a 3-column format to a 2-column format. So this is one of the first things that we see in this first breakpoint at about 1400. At this breakpoint, the resume area stays the same, the projects area stays the same, and the contact area stays the same. But let's decrease it a little bit more. And when we hit yet another breakpoint, notice what's happening with the developer name. That's getting smaller as well. And that's part of good responsive design, is to ensure that as your device decreases in width, the font size also decreases accordingly. And even in this breakpoint, we still have 2-column skills. We have our resume timeline showing the same way, and we have our projects and contacts information. Now, at the next breakpoint, notice what occurs. Our navigation links have now turned into a collapsible navigation. And when we click the toggle, the collapsing toggle, we hide and show the links in our navigation. And along with the change in our navigation bar, we also see the skills are now in a 1-column format. So it goes from a 2-column format, and at the next breakpoint, it goes to a 1-column format. Notice also what happens to the resume area. We go from job information being on both sides of the timeline. We see now that all of the information about each of the jobs is on the right of the timeline. And we also see a change in the projects section. Each of the thumbnails and descriptions each thumbnail and description is now in a 1-column format instead of a staggering format that we saw in the larger device width. And we haven't as yet seen any change in the contact area, but if we keep decreasing the device width. Notice now at this breakpoint, which is about 768 pixels, the horizontal bar is removed and the social media icons go from the right side of the circle to the bottom of the circle. And if we make it smaller still, the device width, the developer's information, name, email, and phone number, goes from being inside a circle to being inside a rectangle. So those are all our responsive breakpoints. And one last thing to show you is that the developer's picture in most of the breakpoints is aligned along the left. But for smaller breakpoints, notice it is now centered. And another thing to note about the layout of this website is that we always have padding on the left and right of the areas, of the section areas. That's so that we don't have text abutting the edges of the areas. One thing that I want to mention that I've noticed often gets left out in web design responsiveness is that most developers, most front-end developers will account for your average desktop size monitors down to smaller devices. But sometimes we forget about widescreen monitors. And I just want to show you what the portfolio looks like in a widescreen monitor. This rendering is showing in a 4K type device. And what we're seeing is that the area of the information is contained within a small area. It's not spanning the entire width of this super large screen. And I often see that that's the case. We forget about these larger device widths. So I just wanted to show you that this portfolio does indeed respond well on a very large monitor. The code for this online portfolio can be found in a zip file in the description area of this video. And I hope you find this useful and that it gets you started in creating your self-promotion tools. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. And to stay updated on the latest content, please subscribe to the channel.